As far as the nuclear summit goes, beginning there, what are we expecting to hear?
Well, the nuclear summit is really the reason everyone is gathered here. The Russians didn't come to it. And then this G-7 summit has been tacked onto the sidelines. President Obama called that late last week. It's really the G7 summit where the focus of conversation is going to be. And President Obama will be in a listening mode. He's going to be testing, he's going to be probing to see just how far he can press his counterparts to put on additional sanctions onto Russia over Ukraine. You know, earlier we heard from the president, and there's a theme and there's an emphasis on being united. The question is, can you remain united and also ratchet up pressure? That will dominate, Trish, the next 24 hours here.
Well, why wouldn't they remain united in this case? Is this really an issue of Europe getting the natural gas and other energy needs it has from Russia, and they're reluctant, perhaps, to be more aggressive with Putin?
Well, that's the theory, right? Or perhaps they think that they should maybe offer more incentives, that there are other ways to give, as the phrase goes, give Putin an off-ramp so that he can sort of de-escalate himself. You know, countries, when they get together, have differences. And they're going to have a different approach on just how to calibrate the sanctions against individuals and potentially against industries. You know, we should note that the sanctions that we've been talking about here are pretty minor in scope. It's against a handful of individuals. It's just meant, it has had an effect on the Russian stock market, on the equities market, but it's just meant to show that they do have the power, they do have the capacity to do this. But this isn't anything close to what could potentially happen if everyone's united.
Well, you know, that's the thing, Hans. So why bother, in a way? Really, they're symbolic, but they don't have an effect. So what's the point? I mean, if we're not going to stop Putin from perhaps going after additional cities in Ukraine through sanctions, why go through all these motions?
Well, there's still a possibility, right? And so you need to have the conversations. Motions to one person would be possibilities for other. Think of sanctions in terms of a dial. And then they can continue to ratchet up, continue to ratchet up, continue to ratchet up. There's just been a little bit of news about the EU summit, which is going to be on Wednesday. That will be dominated by Ukraine as well. And what officials there are saying, this is according to a person familiar with the matter, is that you could potentially have additional sanctions, but they want to see how Russia responds. This is very much a wait-and-see response game. That's why you're seeing incremental sanctions. See whether or not you get any response from Putin, then go back to the drawing board. Then perhaps a little more sanctions, then back to sort of see if there's a response. That's the pattern. Obviously, it hasn't changed the fact that Crimea now has Russian boots on the ground. The Ukrainian government has withdrawn their forces. It is now essentially, functionally, for all intents and purposes, part of Russia.